I have to qualify that though. I mean transparency by making the state, our work, transparent to citizens. It does not mean making the citizens transparent to the state, which would be surveillance state. And so this one-way transparency from the state to the citizens is basically an idea of making trust earned, like trustworthiness. Instead of blindly trust the state or blindly trusting the national health insurance to ration the mask properly, anyone queuing in the line can check their own phone. And if you are a person with blindness, for example, there are also chatbots, voice assistants, and so on, more than 100 ways for you to confirm that people queuing before you have indeed reduced the stock of the pharmacy by 9 or 10 if they are a child, and the people who are queuing after you can also participatory account for your purchase. And so this makes this trust between social sector organizations much more natural to earn. This is the same idea of a distributed ledger, making sure that accountants working in different jurisdictions and so on can come to a rough consensus much more quickly thanks to the transparency enabled by ledger technology. And we use these technologies not to change how the society works, but rather to reaffirm that the society have a absolute freedom of speech, of assembly, and so on, to take those source materials that we publish anywhere and to make analysis, for example, on the over and under supply that eventually led to us working with 24-hour convenience stores, or taking our transcripts and our interview video like this very one that I will publish on YouTube under Creative Commons and even sample them as hip hop rap songs by those monos in Japan. And these are all applications that I have no way of foreseeing, but then it shows the value of real transparency in that we do not restrict the uses to the one that can be imagined by us beforehand, but rather it allows all sorts of creative workers to reinterpret our work in unanticipated ways, and that's innovation for you.
From a corporate standpoint at EY, there are two ways I kind of see this. One is in our services, and then the other is how we exist as a company for our employees and our society. And for example, for the service side, audit or assurance services, companies are very concerned right now about what non-financial values that they can also communicate to the public. That the traditional financial statements, which includes the balance sheet based on market value and P&L, the profit and loss statement based on just the period's activities, is not enough. That there are certain intangibles that the company has. So EY has participated in a project called a long-term value project in the UK, and we have a proposal on how companies can continue to disclose those non-financial or intangible values to the public. There are a lot of companies that give back to the employees or society, not just from a what do you call societal giving kind of donation type of work, but actually doing it because they believe in it. And we try to figure out how, in our services, how companies can disclose that. Another is really about our own company and the transparency of what we do. And I think in the last few years, we have continued to actually not only talk about what we do, but why we do it, and what struggles we are having. So in the past, I think traditional Japanese companies have always been this strong, we know what we're doing, trust us type of corporate culture. But EY has this culture or purpose of building a better working world. And we really believe that we should share some of the struggles, some of the difficult decisions that we're trying to make, and soliciting feedback on what might be good in your view. So it's not a top-down, but it's also bottoms up approach as well. So that we don't, the stewards of the companies are everyone and not just the management. So I think the world is moving towards more of a collective, individual movement rather than just top of the organization who have privilege making decisions to benefit the rest of the firm. So that's, I think, the change that we're starting to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are perhaps seeing peak hierarchy. That is to say, adding more hierarchy will not actually change or improve our ways to solve structural social and environmental issues. So even the most hierarchical organizations in Taiwan, including the cabinet office and the ministries, now have to work with hashtags. We now have participation officers, such as the person who lived with a spoke stock that I alluded to, whose whole job is talking to hashtags. And this really is a new idea, right? Previously, you have officers that talk to journalists, but they know which journalists they're talking to. They have officers that talk to MPs, but they know which parliamentarian they're talking to. But a participation officer that talks to hashtags, nobody knows who is behind those hashtags, but yet you have to engage those hashtags, including, of course, hashtags that demand accountability on social return of value, demanding accountability on the social impact that we are having, and environmental one too.
You know, my difficulty really was in my process of coming out as a gay man. And there still are suicides or bullying that happen in various parts of the world. So one of my personal goals is to address these and to create a more empathetic environment for those who are what we call minorities, not just LGBT, but those who feel like there is no home to them in any society. And that seems like such a huge thing, but personally, I really like to work for teenage, those who are going through puberty, through the university system, so that they can have hope for the future. And as a corporation, I think this democratization, decentralization of decision making, and to create less difference in either earnings or decision-making power between the top and the bottom, I think that's where I really would like to get to. And lastly, as a society, you know, this is more of a dream than what's probably possible. But Audrey, it's really inspiring to hear your view of Taiwan accepting different types of people from outside of Taiwan. And I really hope that we get to a point where there's a lot more borderless communication movement of people, that there's less emphasis on your differences but your commonalities, as you mentioned. So the intersectionality is something that I really would like to see.
By 2030, all the global goals are supposed to be met. But I think my main focus, of course, is on goal 17. I'm even wearing the color of goal 17 with me today, which is partnership for the goals. And the partnership to the goals, if you look into the specific items, it talks about three things that I think are very important, not to people working in digital, but rather people working anywhere. And they are 1718, which is enhancing availability of reliable data, 1717, encouraging effective partnerships, and then 17.6, making sure that the innovations are open to be shared across sectors instead of only in silos. And all those three different specific targets builds a new worldview. That is to say, people who work in the economic sector, the social sector, in the environment, and so on, need to transform both digitally and sustainably into organizations that are not for profit, but with purpose. Rather, they need to be for purpose, but with profit. And that is the main idea change that would predict that we will see by the year 2030.